Okay, folks, if I can have your attention, I'd like to introduce Fern. Thank you, Becky.
Love you. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank, what's his name? I want to thank Keith for asking me to speak and Ron for being diligent about reminding me to speak. So my name's Fern Covid and I'm a social worker. But number one in my life, I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is October 17th, 1991. And I have 34 years of continual sobriety since the day I walked in. And if I don't say anything else from the podium, I'm going to tell you it has nothing to do with me or how good and great I am. It has to do with him. And without him, I'm nothing, even today. So I'm supposed to tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. Well, Keith isn't too far off the mark. I was how do the people say, vision for you? I came in off the street. I didn't grow up on the street. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, to an upper middle class family with a golden spoon in my mouth and never wanted for nothing. I was adopted when I was 2 days old to some parents that were so grateful they had a child. I'm really surprised they didn't return me because I was a handful. So I proceeded to learn how to drink, not like a lady, in Cleveland. And I was the one who would, in Cleveland they have what's called blue laws, so they cut off the drinks at a certain time. So they'd say last call, and I'd go down to the end of the bar and I'd get my last call, and then I'd go to the other end of the bar and get my last call. And they'd say, you just had your last call at the other end. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, the one that would cause the arguments and fights if somebody was sitting in my stool. They'd have a fight in the bar and the bartender would be pulling people off of each other, and then they'd say, Fern, what are you doing down on the bottom there? You know, well, the guy pissed me off. Sorry, guy. My language hasn't gotten a lot better, but it's gotten a little bit better. Well, of course, the last call was not my last call, so I would always go to to so-and-so's house or over to the after-hours bar, and I would continue to drink. I don't ever remember going to sleep. I remember passing out, and coming to. That was just my gig. And there was always one more I could have. So I ended up, somebody asked me to go on a junket back when they had junkets. We're talking a while ago. And they were coming to Las Vegas, never been to Las Vegas. He asked me to go. I said, sure. So I come out here and I met him. And he was, had blonde curly hair and very suave, and he was just really cool, and so I, of course, fell in love, and off I trollop into Las Vegas, Nevada. He says, where do you want to go? And I said, I want to go to Circus. And he goes, Circus? And I go, yeah, because that's where my first husband had sang. So I wanted to see what it looked like. So he, all right, we'll go to Circus, and he's like, oh, I got a real winner here. Well, I don't know why, but I fell in love with the guy. I do know why, but went back to Cleveland, packed up my car, and drove out here to be with the guy who I ended up marrying. It wasn't a very good idea. Did not turn out very well, but I continued drinking. And here in Vegas, I learned real quickly that there was a whole bunch of ways you could drink without having to worry about much. So things like, back then they had machines that kicked out money, and so I'd see what they call them blinkies, where you see the lights are flashing on a machine, and some tourist didn't realize that they still had money in the machine, so you would punch it out and get the money and go get drinks. but you had to have a quarter in your hand so that you couldn't get picked up for vagrancy. So I started to learn all these really cool tricks. And so I would hustle the blinkies, and my most favorite, though, was the craps pit. And I would go to the craps pit, and I'd watch for a while, and I'd find the guy that was kind of drunk or drinking, but they had to have either black chips or green chips. I had my, standards. So that's hundreds or 25 quarters. So I'd wait and just stand there, very innocently, and they'd look over and they go, "Oh, you must be lucky for me." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you. I'll go." And they go, No, stay. And I'd keep drinking with them. And eventually they would get drunk and miss the rack, and the chip would land on the ground. And I would lean over and step on it and drag it and then pick it up and put it in my pocket. It's called chip hustling. They don't let you do that anymore in Vegas. It certainly served me well. But I realized that there was a whole bunch of people I didn't understand would drink a couple sips and leave their drink next to the machine. So for a woman, there's a whole bunch of ways to drink free, but you can also just take the drinks that people leave because you don't really think about it. At that time in my life, I was living on Fremont Street. Fremont Street was a street, for those of you that don't realize it used to be a street. And I had a really nice apartment. It was a cardboard box with a flap on it. The plumbing wasn't really good, so I had to use the Mint Hotel, the back bathroom. And when I got hungry, I would go over to Sassy Sally's and hit their dumpster and get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You had to get the top stuff because that's where the good stuff was. And I just thought I had it going on. I had a place to sleep, I had a place to eat, I had a place to wash up. So what the heck is the problem? Leave me alone. Well, a couple of people thought there might be a problem, and one thing led to another, and I get sent to a treatment center. And it's over on Washington. And back in that day, it was not a open ethnic area. I stood out like a sore thumb. And it didn't matter because I was crazy. That's a nice the way to say it. That's when Keith met me. So I didn't really feel there was a problem. I told people there wasn't a problem. I maybe was 110 pounds soaking wet. I had my clothes on me only. I traveled very light. I was taking care of all my needs, and just leave me alone. I'm not hurting anyone. Well, they sent me over to this treatment center, and at the treatment center, they asked me to do some things, and I'm like, I don't do that, and I don't do this, and I don't do that. And these two guys come in to do the big book study on Tuesday night. I think it was 7 o'clock. And I'm there because I gotta be. And I went up to him, and I don't know why, and I said, "What are those step things?" Now, granted, I got sober here in Las Vegas, Nevada, but I'm from Cleveland. I'm a half hour away from Dr. Bob's house, but came all the way to Vegas so I could get sober. Like, go figure. So needless to say, the two guys say, I said, "What are these steps?" And they said, "Well, we'll help you with it if you'd like me to." And I said, "Okay, maybe, because I'm not going to give you more than I need to get what I want." I was very good at getting what I want for whatever. The two guys that came into my life along with Keith at that time, years later when I was friends with them, I said, well, they looked at each other and said something, and I didn't hear what they said. I said, "What were you guys talking about?" They said, "We were trying to decide if you were a boy or a girl." Oh, okay. Didn't bother me because I didn't care. I didn't feel that I was worthy or worthwhile or had any purpose. I was just like an amoeba, I was 37 years old at the time. I hadn't made anything of my life. I hadn't done anything. I was, on the street. And I really felt like I was a worthless piece of, what. They helped me with the steps, and for a while there, as people always say this, I thought my name was get in the car, get in the car. And, I quickly joined the group that they had, which was the Floating Big Book. And we went to a lot of meetings. We did, Charter Hospital was open back then. And there was a lot of other service commitments, different than they have now. I won't be political. They were Samaritan House and detox and places where, people were trying to get sober. And our group was very service orientated. And I would hang around with them and go where they went and did what they did. And it wasn't because I was so attracted to the program. They had a lot of really good looking guys in there that seemed to have some money. So that's what was attracting me. I just thought, well, if I hang around these guys, maybe I can meet somebody that's got money and life will be easier. So I hung around with them for a long time. When I was about, I would say, maybe 3, 4, maybe 6 at the most months sober, I decided that I had started to work my steps, and I decided it was time for me to go back to Ohio, which is where I was from, Cleveland, and take care of my mom. My mom had been sick for a while, and I basically would just keep sending postcards from wherever I was. I used to play poker. I said for a living. I never made a living at it, but I played poker. I was noted for ending up in a city where there was a tournament, and I'd have no money in my pocket, no place to stay, and within 10 minutes I was in a game, had a place to stay, and had food in my belly. I got to be a very good hustler. I don't know if that's supposed to be proud of that or not, but I was a very good hustler. So I went back to Ohio and took care of my mom, and I decided, if I'm going to be here and I'm going to stay sober, I need to go to a meeting. And when I left, a gentleman at the Triangle, who's no longer here, Don Katera, I had went to see him because he was from Cleveland. And I went to him and he said, I want you to look these 3 people up. And he wrote these names down. And I got to Cleveland, I stuck it in my pocket, and I didn't really pay much attention to it. And I get to Cleveland, and I'm looking for these people, and I'm calling this club that's down the street, and the phone's constantly busy. And finally, some old guy answered the phone. And he said, I'll pick you up tonight for a meeting. I said, great. So we're driving to the meeting, and he tells me his name, and I'm like, God, that sounds familiar. I go to the meeting, he sits me down with some ladies, and he goes to the other side of the room, and I'm like, what the heck? He picked me up. What's going on here? So when I asked him years later, he said, I wanted to see what you were going to do, what your intentions were, I guess. Needless to say, his name was Don Cassini, God rest his soul. I went home and looked at the piece of paper. He was the second name on the list. Get goosebumps when I say that. He says, I'm going to pick you up Friday and take you to the Sister Ignatia group, and I'm going to have you meet my sponsor. And I'm like, oh, great, that sounds good. And he picks me up. We go to the meeting. He introduces me to this guy. The guy, he likes to play poker. He likes to go to Vegas. My kind of guy. He's Italian. He likes to eat. I'm having a great time. I'm thinking, this is okay. He tells me his name. I'm like, God, that name sounds familiar. And I go back and I look at that little piece of paper, first name on the list. Tony Morales, God rest his soul. And he is, at that time, he was 40-something years sober, which I had never met anybody that sober. And so Tony took me to the first trip I made to Dr. Bob's house. And I was telling him my story on the way down. It's like 30 minutes away. And he gets lost. And I said, I thought you said Dr. Bob was your sponsor. You don't know where he lives? I mean, what the heck? He says, well, I was so enthralled on your story, I forgot where I was going. I said, oh, okay. So we get to Dr. Bob's, and he starts showing me different things in Dr. Bob's house. And it was pretty cool going there, and even cooler going with a guy with a lot of sobriety. Took me to my first Founder's Day, which blew me away. He was Hispanic, and I spoke a wee bit of Spanish, so he would take me to the Spanish meeting sometimes, and I'd say, the guy went to the bar and he got this and did this, and then what? And he goes, you got all that? I said, well, yeah, but I didn't get the this part. And so, him and I got to be friends. So needless to say, I stayed in Cleveland, and I took care of my mom, and I said, well, maybe you should do something with your life. And so at 37 years old, I decided to try to go to school, go to college and make something of myself. And I went to a associate school and did pretty good, so I said, okay, maybe that one brain cell that's left in my brain, I could do something with. So I went to an undergrad school, went to Cleveland State University. And when I went to Cleveland State, I had no idea what I was going to do or what I was going to be when I grew up. I still don't know that, and I'm pretty old, so I better hurry up and figure it out. But I ended up going to school, and they said, you've taken all the courses you could take. You got to decide what your major is. And I had no idea. By this time, I'd been going to AA for a long time. I was sponsoring people. I was doing what we would call wet calls, where the person's drunk. You put the towel on your seat of your car, and you take a bucket or a pan and a bottle of whiskey, and you go to detox, and that's how you protect your stuff but still help people. And I was doing all that stuff and going on. I started a meeting at the university because I couldn't get away to a meeting and still make it back to my classes. So I started a meeting at the university. And so at that time, and I keep trying to get back to that period of time in my life, I was very in sync with him. And I literally felt like I had two hands, one on each cheek on my butt. And I remember the people that I met at EOB that actually was, I can't think of her name. Lucy? No. Louise, thank you. It was Louise's house. They told me, you grab your rear end with both hands and hang on for a ride. And I felt like somebody was literally moving me along. The next thing would just be in place. And the next thing I knew, I was studying to be a social worker. So I finished magna cum laude, not because I'm so good or great, but because he is. My mother, who was on dialysis at the time, was able to see me walk across the stage. Still get goosebumps when I think about that. So I thought, well, okay, so we're on a roll. Well, and I see if I could go to grad school. So I applied to grad school. Didn't realize at the time they accept anybody that has money, which I didn't have, but I had low enough income to get money. And being a good drunk, 1 degree is good, 2 are better. So I graduated with 2 master's degrees from Case Western Reserve University, which is pretty prominent university. Nobody knows it mostly out here, but it's a big university. Cost me a lot of money that I was paying and paying and paying. But at the end of my time at Case, my mother got really ill, and she ended up on a respirator ventilator. I learned a lot of things in Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of the gifts I got was a gentleman named John Todman, who is no longer with us, God rest his soul. And one of the things he would tell me is, call me every day. And I thought, I'm going to check in with people on the street. I ain't going to check in with people here. but I did. I called him every day. And when my mother flatlined and went into at dialysis and went into the emergency room, and I had no thought of what to do, the next thing I heard was the phone ringing and John's voice going, "Hello," and I'm like, "Hello." I had called him without even realizing I dialed the phone. It was a phone on the wall, the old payphone kind of thing. So I realized that that lesson that he had given me years before was huge, and I ask all of my sponsees to do that. Not that they do it, but I do ask them, like, this is what I did, do what you want to do. So needless to say, I ended up graduating and decided I wanted to come back to Las Vegas, Nevada, because that's where I got my life back. And I came back here and started working, got my licenses and whatnot, and ended up working back at the treatment center that I had gone through, which was pretty cool. That was like a full, turn. I've been able to go in recovery. I always wanted to travel. I went to, we were talking about it earlier, I went to Atlanta. Well, first I went to San Antonio International, and I went to Atlanta International. I was going to go to Canada, and it got too complicated, so I let it go. I've been to many places out of country. I've gone to Australia, New Zealand. I'm trying to go around the world. I've gone to Mediterranean twice, through the whole Mediterranean, and Italy and France and all those. I've gone to the northern section, including St. Petersburg, Russia, which was phenomenal. And then I did a trip from there to Iceland, which was also pretty cool. I've been very blessed with the ability to be able to do that, and also the ability to financially support myself. I don't live in a cardboard box anymore. Although I did notice the other day that the walls in my living room are beige. And I thought I better go and change the color of my walls, but I take showers now, not in the bathroom at the Mint Hotel, which is no longer there. I actually have a shower and take them. I have a car. And probably most precious to me right now is I decided to start a retirement hobby, so I'd have something to do when I retire. And a friend of Bill W's talked me into learning how to show dogs. So I said, okay, I'll try that. I just want a dog for a pet, and so I started showing. I said, I'll go 3 times, and if I like it, great. If I don't, leave me alone. And so God only knows why I went with this breed. She goes, oh, why don't you get an English Cocker Spaniel? And I'm like, oh, they're kind of cute. Okay. They're a lot of energy and a lot of work for their coat. It's a lot. So I ended up getting my boy. His name's Cambridge. That's his call name. And I started showing, and he'll be 5 in June. He's an American Kennel Club champion. It was a hoot going California and Arizona and Utah and all over the place with him. I met a lot of people and a whole new group of people that I'm friends with in all the different states. Him and I traveled to Washington State for the Nationals, which he got a ribbon there, which was cool. So it got to the point where he had hurt himself, and I didn't think I could show him anymore. And so I had always didn't want a boy, I wanted a girl. And so I was telling people I want a girl, and I have a girl. So now I got 2. She will be 2 years old next month. And she is 4 points away from getting her championship, so I've been showing her. And I have an awesome time in my life today. I do want to mention about a very close friend of mine who is a member of this program who passed, Patty Murphy. May God take care of her soul. Very, 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 very close friend of mine. If you saw Patty, you saw me. And if you saw me, you saw Patty. We went everywhere together. And one of the gifts she gave me on her way to see him was she enjoyed every single day of her life, from when she was diagnosed with cancer to when she passed. And she's such a stubborn Irish person that she was diagnosed and said it was going to be like, I don't know, 5 months or something like that. And so we all had a party for before she turned 70. And so she turned 70, and then it was her anniversary. So we all had a party for her anniversary. And then she turned 80, and we all had a party. We had a lot of parties. She really had a lot of parties, but she was 83 when she passed, and about probably, I want to say 68 or 69 maybe, when she got diagnosed with 4 or 5 months. And one of the things that I always admired about her and didn't realize how big of a gift it was when I saw her with hands that were hard to hold things and feet that were hard to walk with, do things for other people continually, even when she herself was not feeling good. And she enjoyed every single minute of every single day. And in her honor, and probably in his honor, I'm trying to do that too. I have no clue if I'll make it till 80. I'm 71 now. It's coming to the conclusion that I may not have more than 20 years left. I wish I was back a few years, but I'm going to make the most of those 20 years I can and help as many people as I can. I truly believe that when I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I don't go up to someone and say, "Excuse me, are you a drunk? Oh, you're not? Sorry, I can't help you," and go to someone else. I help God with all his children, and that means everyone, whether you have an alcohol problem or you don't. And the whole idea of that is the more I help you, the more I'm helping me. When I came to the program, all I was, what can I take from you? What can I get from you? What can I con you out of? Now it's, what can I give you? What can I help you with? What can I provide for you? I'm fortunate enough to be in a field that I can help a lot of people, and God tends to send people that he seems to think I might be suited for, not to marry, as clients. And I like to think that everyone I come across, I try to make their life better, at least for the moments that they're with me. I still work 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. It's a rough schedule, but it allows me to show my dogs on the weekends. So we all have our angles, even in recovery. Today in recovery, I find that the things that I learned early on, the hope, which isn't talked about much out here, the 4 absolutes, the taking it one day at a time gets more and more important the older I get. And it really rings true, and I find it coming out in everything I do now, which wasn't the case. I was constantly fighting everything and everybody. You could ask Keith, he'll tell you that. Today, I try to be the best Alcoholics Anonymous member I can, and the best example of Alcoholics Anonymous that I can. And hopefully, I am a little bit better than I was yesterday, and tomorrow I'll be a little bit better than I was today. If you're new or relatively new to Alcoholics Anonymous, or if you're an old timer and you're having a rough time, do yourself a favor. Go to one more meeting. Read the big book one more time. Shake someone's hand and welcome them to the meeting. Ask God for help one more time, and maybe the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous can help you like it did for me, October 17th, 1991. Thank you for allowing me to be of service.